The house on Gresham Street had been vacant for years, a brooding structure with boarded windows and a garden overrun by weeds. When Emily and her family moved in, they were thrilled by the prospect of turning the old house into their dream home. However, they soon discovered that the house held secrets far darker than peeling wallpaper and creaky floorboards. From the moment they unpacked, Emily's son Ben was drawn to the basement. It was a vast, cold space filled with cobwebs and forgotten relics. There was something off about it, Emily thought, something that made the hair on the back of her neck stand on end every time she went down to fetch something. One evening, as the family sat in the living room, they heard a faint sound, a distant, rhythmic knocking. Emily's husband, Tom, shrugged it off as the house settling. But the next night, the knocking was louder and more insistent. "Mom, I heard voices down there," Ben whispered as Emily tucked him into bed. "They were calling my name." Emily's blood ran cold, but she assured him it was just his imagination. Still, the knocking persisted, growing more frantic each night. It was as if something trapped below was desperate to get out. Unable to bear it any longer, Emily decided to investigate. Armed with a flashlight, she descended into the basement. The air grew colder with each step, and the beam of her flashlight flickered ominously. As she reached the bottom, the knocking stopped. Silence enveloped her, thick and oppressive. She scanned the basement, her heart pounding in her chest. Shadows danced on the walls, and for a moment, she thought she saw a figure lurking in the corner. She edged closer, the flashlight trembling in her hand. The figure moved, and Emily stifled a scream. It was just an old, tattered sheet draped over a broken chair. She let out a sigh of relief, but her reprieve was short-lived. Behind her, she heard a whisper, faint but unmistakable. "Emily." She spun around, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. There was no one there. The whisper came again, louder this time, and the knocking resumed, now deafening. She felt a cold hand brush against her arm, and she dropped the flashlight, plunging the basement into darkness. Panic surged through her as she fumbled for the light. When she finally grasped it and switched it back on, she found herself face to face with a figure. It was a woman, pale and translucent, her eyes hollow and pleading. "Help us," the ghostly figure whispered. Emily staggered back, tripping over an old box. The woman reached out, her hand passing through Emily's arm like mist. "Free us," she begged. "We are trapped here." Before Emily could respond, the basement door slammed shut. She scrambled to her feet and ran up the stairs, pounding on the door. Tom yanked it open, his face pale. "What happened?" he asked, pulling her into his arms. Emily tried to explain, but her words came out in a frantic jumble. She insisted they had to leave, but Tom convinced her to stay, to try and understand what was happening. That night, they huddled together in the living room, their eyes glued to the basement door. The knocking had stopped, replaced by a low, mournful wail. It echoed through the house, filling them with dread. Days turned into weeks, and the hauntings grew more intense. Objects moved on their own, cold spots appeared in the house, and the whispers followed Emily wherever she went. Desperate, she researched the house's history and discovered a chilling tale. In the 1920s, the house had belonged to a reclusive family. The parents were rumored to be involved in dark rituals, and their 3 daughters had vanished without a trace. Neighbors spoke of strange sounds and eerie lights coming from the house, but no one dared investigate. Determined to end the torment, Emily decided to confront the spirits. She descended into the basement one last time, clutching an old locket she had found in the attic, a locket that had belonged to one of the missing daughters. "I know who you are," she called into the darkness. "I know what happened to you." The air grew colder, and the ghostly figures appeared, their faces etched with sorrow. Emily held up the locket, and the spirits recoiled. "Release us," they cried in unison. With a trembling hand, Emily placed the locket on the ground. The ghosts surged forward, their forms merging into a swirling vortex of light. A deafening roar filled the basement, and then silence. Emily opened her eyes to find the basement empty, the air warm and still. She climbed the stairs, feeling an unfamiliar lightness in her step. The house was quiet, peaceful even. As she and her family left the house on Gresham Street, Emily glanced back one last time. The basement window, once dark and foreboding, now seemed to sparkle in the sunlight. The echoes of the past had been silenced, but the memories lingered, a reminder of the horrors that had once lurked below. And as they drove away, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that some doors should never be opened, some secrets left buried. The house on Gresham Street stood empty once more, waiting for the next family to uncover its dark, haunted history.